The day I turned 18, I became officially invisible. No cake. No candles. No family waiting outside with balloons or a car key or some awkward birthday hug. Just a plastic chair in a county office, a duffel bag at my feet, and a case file with my name on it. That was my whole life reduced to paper clips and signatures. By the end of the day, I would no longer be a ward of the state. I would be free, they said. But freedom didn't feel like freedom when you had nowhere to go. I thought the worst part of that day would be walking out with $200, a list of shelters, and the sharp understanding that nobody was coming for me. I was wrong. Because before I left, a lawyer called with a message that changed everything. My grandmother, the woman who had vanished 2 years earlier and left me to rot in foster care, had left me an inheritance. Not money. Not safety. Not answers. An abandoned flower farm buried in debt. And somewhere inside that ruined place, under dust, weeds, and 10 years of silence, was the truth about why she disappeared. I could sign the property away and walk with enough money to start over. Or I could go there first. I chose the farm. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have, each second stretching thin and heavy, like time itself didn't want to move forward. I sat in the hard plastic chair outside Ms. Albright's office, staring at the scuffed linoleum floor, my duffel bag resting against my leg. Everything I owned fit inside it. 2 changes of clothes, a worn paperback with a cracked spine, and a pair of shoes that had seen better days. 18. For most people, that number meant something. Freedom. Possibility. A beginning. For me, it meant an ending. 2 years earlier, I had been just another girl living in a small apartment with her grandmother. Then one day, she was gone. No note. No explanation. Just gone. 3 weeks later, the rent ran out, and so did my options. The state stepped in, and I became a file. A case. A responsibility passed between strangers who were paid to care, but never stayed long enough to know me. 3 group homes. Different beds. Different rules. Same feeling. Temporary. A buzzer sounded, snapping me back. ARA? Ms. Albright called. I stood and walked into her office. It smelled like weak coffee and disinfectant, like every government building I'd ever been in. Papers were stacked everywhere, leaning like they might collapse if someone breathed too hard. She gave me a tired smile. Happy birthday. I nodded, unable to return it. She slid an envelope across the desk. This is your transitional assistance. It's not much, but I know, I said quietly. She hesitated, tapping her pen against my file. You'll also want to review the shelter list. There are a few places with openings this week. Shelters. That was the plan. That was my future. Invisible. The law office didn't feel real. Everything about it was too clean, too quiet, too polished. Marble floors, soft lighting, shelves lined with books that looked like they'd never been touched. I stood there in my faded hoodie and worn jeans, feeling like I had walked into someone else's life by mistake. The receptionist gave me a tight, practiced smile. Name. ARA Vance, I said. Something flickered across her face, recognition, maybe surprise. He's been expecting you. Of course he had. Mr. Davies' office was warm, lined with dark wood and filled with the faint scent of old paper. He stood when I walked in, tall and composed, like someone who had never once worried about where he would sleep. Miss Vance, he said gently. Thank you for coming. I didn't sit until he gestured. My hand stayed clenched in my lap. I was your grandmother's lawyer, he began. Lena Vance left very specific instructions. I was to meet you on your 18th birthday and present you with your inheritance. Inheritance. The word didn't belong to me. He slid an envelope across the desk. My name was written on it in handwriting I hadn't seen in 2 years. My throat tightened. We didn't have anything, I said. We could barely pay rent. On the surface, he replied calmly. But your grandmother owned a property outright. Blackwood Flower Farm. The name hit something buried deep in my memory: soil, sunlight, the faint scent of flowers. For a second, it almost felt like hope. Then he continued. The property has been abandoned for over a decade. It carries significant back taxes, just over $52,000. The air left my lungs. He opened another folder. There is, however, an offer. A developer is willing to purchase the land for $200,000. I stared at the numbers. Debt or escape? And somehow, both felt like a trap. I left the office with two things in my hand. One was a glossy folder from the developer, clean, sharp, full of numbers that could erase every problem I'd ever had. The other was a simple, worn envelope with my name written in my grandmother's handwriting. One felt like the future. The other felt like the past. I stood on the sidewalk outside the building for a long time, watching people pass by like I wasn't even there. Businessmen talking into phones, couples laughing, taxis rushing past. Everyone seemed to know where they were going. I didn't. $145,000 after everything was paid. It was more money than I had ever seen, more than I had ever imagined having. With that, I could disappear into a better life. A small apartment. Food that didn't come from donation bins. Maybe even school. No more shelters. No more being temporary. So why couldn't I just say yes? Why had she held onto that farm so tightly? Mr. Davies' words echoed in my head. She refused to sell, right up to the end. It didn't make sense. Unless there was something I didn't understand. Back in his office, he had handed me two final things: a small tarnished silver key and a bus ticket. One way, he had said. Havenwood. Leaves in the morning. A choice. Sign now, or go see it first. I looked down at the ticket again, the ink slightly faded. Route 4. Blackwood Lane. I should have torn it up. Instead, the next morning, I was standing at the bus station before sunrise, my duffel bag slung over my shoulder. I hadn't signed anything. I needed to see it. Even if it was a mistake. The bus pulled out of the station with a long, tired hiss, like it didn't want to make the trip any more than I did. I took a seat by the window and pressed my forehead against the cool glass as the city began to slide away behind me. Grey buildings turned into smaller streets, then strip malls, then stretches of nothing. It felt like I was peeling away layers of a life I had never really belonged to. For the first hour, I didn't think about anything. Then the question started. If she had this farm, why didn't we live there? Why did we struggle for every meal, every bill, every breath, if she had something worth that much? The anger came back fast, sharp and familiar. I remembered nights of cheap dinners, her hands cracked from cleaning chemicals, the way she would pretend she wasn't tired when I knew she was barely holding herself together. And all that time, she had owned land? It felt like a lie. A betrayal. The bus rolled deeper into the countryside, and the air changed. Cleaner. Cooler. It carried something faint, earth, grass, something alive. And with it came memories. Small ones at first. Flickers. The sound of a porch swing creaking. The smell of flowers after rain. My grandmother's voice, soft and steady, telling me where to plant seeds. You have to give it a reason to grow, ARA, she used to say. I closed my eyes, gripping the edge of the seat. I hadn't thought about those memories in years. Maybe I didn't want to. Next stop, Route 4 and Blackwood Lane. The driver's voice snapped through the bus. My heart jumped. I grabbed my bag and stood. As the bus doors opened, I stepped out into silence. No buildings. No people. Just a narrow dirt road disappearing into trees. And somewhere down that road, answers. The silence hit me first. Not the quiet of the city at night, filled with distant sirens and humming traffic, but a deeper kind of silence. The kind that pressed in on you, broken only by wind moving through trees and the faint rustle of leaves under your feet. I adjusted the strap of my duffel bag and started walking down the dirt road. Blackwood Lane. It didn't look like a road anymore, just two faint tire tracks swallowed by weeds and time. The trees on either side leaned inward, their branches forming a tunnel overhead, filtering the last light of the day into thin, flickering shadows. After a few minutes, I saw it. A rusted iron gate, hanging crooked on one hinge. A wooden sign barely clinging to one post, its letters faded but still readable, Blackwood Flower Farm. My chest tightened. I pushed the gate open and stepped through. The driveway stretched ahead, long and overgrown, leading to a house that looked like it had been holding its breath for years. The white paint had peeled into grey patches. The porch sagged slightly, like it was too tired to stand straight anymore. The windows were dark, hollow. To the side, the greenhouses stood like broken skeletons, metal frames twisted and rusted, glass shattered into jagged teeth. And the fields. They weren't fields anymore. They were wild. A tangled sea of weeds and stubborn flowers growing wherever they wanted, like the land had forgotten it was ever meant to be controlled. "This is it," I whispered. Not a farm. A ruin. A mistake. Still, I climbed the porch steps and pulled the tarnished key from my pocket. The lock resisted, then gave with a sharp click. The door creaked open. And the smell of dust, time, and something long forgotten rushed out to meet me. The house felt frozen in time. Dust coated everything in a dull grey layer, softening the edges of chairs, tables, even the air itself. It was like stepping into a place that had been paused mid-breath and never allowed to exhale again. I moved slowly, my footsteps loud against the wooden floor. Nothing had been touched. A chipped mug sat by the sink. A folded blanket rested on the sofa. A book lay open on a small table, its pages curled with age. It didn't look abandoned, it looked left behind. My eyes landed on the mantel. A metal box sat there, small and square, its surface dull and worn. Something about it felt intentional. Important. I stepped closer and tried to lift it. It didn't move. Bolted down. My pulse quickened. This was it. This had to be it. I searched the room, pulling open drawers, checking shelves, even patting down the pockets of an old coat hanging by the door. Nothing. No key. Frustration tightened in my chest, sharp and sudden. Of course. It wouldn't be that easy. I sank down onto the floor, exhausted, staring at the room like it might give me answers if I looked long enough. That's when I noticed the book. Leaves of Grass. Her favorite. I picked it up slowly, brushing dust from the cover. A slip of paper peeked out between the pages. I opened it, and my breath caught. A small key was taped inside. Beneath it, a single line underlined in faint pencil, "Keep your face always toward the sunshine, and shadows will fall behind you." My hands shook as I peeled the key free. I rushed back to the mantel. The key slid into the lock. Turned. Clicked. I lifted the lid, not money. Letters. Dozens of them, tied in bundles, aged and fragile. On top, a single envelope. In her handwriting. For ARA, when you're ready. My chest tightened as I opened it. The first line blurred through tears before I even finished reading it. My dearest ARA. I did not leave you. I was protecting you. I didn't stop reading. Not when my eyes burned. Not when the words blurred into each other. Not when my hand started shaking so badly I had to steady the pages against my knees. I read everything. Every letter she had written after she disappeared. At first, the pain was sharp, each sentence cutting through the story I had told myself for 2 years. That she left. That she gave up. That I wasn't worth staying for. But with every page, that version of her shattered. In its place, something else began to take shape. Someone who had been fighting. Someone who had been watching from a distance, holding herself together through silence because it was the only way to keep me safe. She wrote about her days, endless work, places she never named, exhaustion she tried to soften with simple details. The weather. The sky. The phases of the moon. And always, me. I hope you're safe today, my sparrow. I hope you're laughing somewhere. I hope you remember the smell of lilies. It was like she was building a life for me in her mind because she couldn't be part of the real one. By the time the last letter slipped from my fingers, the anger I had carried for so long was gone. In its place was something heavier. Something deeper. Love. And grief. I sat there in the quiet house, surrounded by dust and silence, and finally understood what this place really was. Not a burden. Not a mistake. A promise. And suddenly, the idea of selling it didn't feel like survival anymore. It felt like betrayal. I couldn't stay inside the house anymore. The air felt too heavy, too full of memories that had finally found their voice. I needed space, something real, something I could touch. So I stepped outside just as the first light of morning began to spill over the fields. Everything looked different in daylight. Still wild. Still broken. But not dead. I walked past the shattered greenhouses, through waist-high weeds brushing against my legs, until I reached the old barn at the edge of the property. It leaned slightly to one side, its faded red paint almost gone, the door hanging open like it had been waiting for me. Inside, it smelled of dust, hay, and time. I was about to turn back when something caught my eye. The floorboards in the far corner, one of them looked wrong. Less worn. I knelt down, pried it up with my fingers, and felt it give with a low groan. Beneath it was a chest. Heavy. Wooden. Wrapped in iron bands. My heart started racing. I opened it. Not money. Ledgers. Old records filled with my grandmother's handwriting, years of business, then years of debt. Payments made in small, painful amounts. A life slowly being traded away. And beneath them, documents. Oakage holdings. Letters. Notes. Proof. She had been fighting them. All this time. At the very bottom, I found a small canvas pouch. Inside, cash. $10,000. My breath caught. Tucked beside it, a note. For words. For the soil. Grow. I stared at it, the weight of everything settling into place. This wasn't an escape. It was a beginning. And in that moment, I knew. I wasn't selling. My hands were still shaking when I pulled my phone out of my pocket. The screen flickered to life, low battery. One call. That's all I had. I stared at Mr. Davies' card for a second, then pressed the number. It rang once. Twice. Davies, he answered, calm and steady. It's ARA, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. It wasn't uncertain. It wasn't afraid. It was clear. There was a pause. Have you made a decision? I looked out across the field, the wild growth, the broken glass of the greenhouse catching the morning light. The barn behind me hiding years of truth my grandmother had left behind. Yes, I said. I'm not selling. Silence. Then something shifted on the other end. Not surprise. Not disappointment. Relief. Good, he said quietly. I was hoping you'd say that. I blinked. You were. Your grandmother didn't fight this long just to have it signed away in 5 minutes, he replied. And now we finally have something she didn't. The documents, I said. Exactly. What you found in that barn, it's not just history. It's leverage. For the first time, the situation didn't feel like a trap. It felt like a fight. But the taxes, I said. I don't have enough. You don't need all of it right now, he said. You need time. That 10,000? It shows intent. We file for a stay, propose a payment plan, slow them down. An oakage? A pause. We stop playing defense, he said. We start digging. I looked down at my hands, dirty, scraped, real. This wasn't about surviving anymore. This was about standing my ground. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't backing down. The first 3 days, I didn't think about the future. I didn't think about the taxes, or oakage, or what would happen in 90 days. I just cleaned. The house needed it, and maybe I did too. I opened every window, letting fresh air push out the stale, heavy smell of dust and time. I scrubbed the floors until the grey film lifted, revealing the wood underneath. I wiped down every surface, every shelf, every forgotten corner. It was exhausting. My hands blistered. My back ached. My arms felt like they might give out. But with every layer of dirt I removed, something inside me shifted. The house started to feel less like a grave. And more like a home. I found pieces of her everywhere. A folded recipe tucked inside a cookbook. A pair of worn gardening gloves on a shelf. A faded photograph by the bed, her, younger, holding me, smiling like nothing in the world could touch us. I didn't feel alone anymore. After the house, I moved outside. The nearest greenhouse was the least damaged, so I started there. Clearing broken glass. Pulling out dead vines. Dragging rusted debris into piles. It was slow. Frustrating. Never-ending. But then, I saw it. In the far corner, climbing up the twisted metal frame, was a rose bush. Alive. Not just surviving, thriving. Dark red blooms, small but strong, pushing through years of neglect like they refused to disappear. I stepped closer, brushing my fingers against the petals. Soft. Real. A blackwood rose. Something inside my chest tightened. This place wasn't dead. It was waiting. And so was I. The first time I left the farm, it felt strange. Like stepping out of something fragile I had just begun to build. Havenwood was only a few miles down the road, but it felt like a different world. A single main street, a general store, a diner with a flickering sign, and people who looked at you long enough to decide if you belonged. I pushed open the door to the general store, the bell above it ringing softly. The man behind the counter looked up, his eyes narrowing just slightly. Weathered face. Careful expression. "You're the girl from the Vance place," he said. Not a question. "Yes," I replied. "A or A?" Lena's granddaughter. Something shifted in his expression, not warmth, but recognition. "Didn't think anyone would come back for that land," he muttered as he rang up my items. "Oakage has been circling it for years. They don't like being told no." I tightened my grip on the seed packets in my hand. "I'm not selling." He glanced up at me again, this time a little longer. "Then you better be ready to fight." I didn't answer. Because I already was. That afternoon, the fight came to me. A black car rolled up the driveway, clean and out of place against the dirt and weeds. A man stepped out, a sharp suit, perfect smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Vance," he said smoothly. "Markham, Oakage Holdings." I didn't take his hand. "We've increased our offer," he continued. 250,000. You walk away clean. No debt, no stress. He gestured around like the farm was nothing. I looked past him, to the greenhouse, the rose, the land. "This isn't for sale," I said. His smile slipped, just for a second. "The county will take it anyway," he warned. "Then you can try your luck at the auction," I replied. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt rooted. The story doesn't end here. Not really. The taxes are still there, hanging over me like a clock that never stops ticking. The legal fight with Oakage is just beginning, and every day brings a new problem I don't fully know how to solve. Some mornings I wake up and the weight of it all feels too heavy, like maybe I made the wrong choice. But then I step outside. I feel the dirt under my hands. I see the greenhouse slowly coming back to life. I smell the roses that refuse to die, even when everything else fell apart. And I remember. I was never abandoned. I was protected. What my grandmother left me wasn't a perfect life or an easy escape. She didn't hand me a solution. She gave me something harder. Something real. A place to begin again. For 2 years, I thought I was nothing more than a file, a name in a system, someone waiting to be forgotten. But standing here now, on this land she fought so hard to keep, I understand the truth. I am not a ghost. I am a beginning. Home isn't something you're given. It's something you choose to build. And this is mine.